So Fantastic Mr. Fox lives in a den, and he goes and hunts from the farmer Boggis Spunt and Bean's houses, and he hunts chickens and geese and cider to drink. But unfortunately, the farmers concocted a plan to try and catch him, and they found out where his hole for his den was. So they stayed outside his den, ready to shoot him when he came out. But Mr. Fox was too clever for them. And when he came out, he could smell the farmers. So he ran back into his den, but unfortunately slightly too late, as the farmers shot off his tail. When he got back to his den, they didn't have any food. Him and Mrs. Fox and their 4 small foxes, and they had to dig, because the farmers got a big, it's on this side, yeah, like a big digger to dig them out. So they tried to dig them out. So the foxes had to dig to try and go deeper underground to get away from them, and they did. And then I'm struggling. And then Mr. Fox had a great idea, and he dug. He took the small foxes, and they dug and they dug and they dug, and they came up in farmer. Oh, hang on, which farmer? Let me just. Who remembers which farmer had the chickens? Boggis. I think Boggis. Yes, Farmer Boggis. They came up in one of the chickens' house, so they took some chickens back to their den to live for some food, and then Mr. Fox said he'd got one more stop to do before coming home. So that's where we were up to. I hope that catches you up, and then we'll start today. Let me show you. And if you do want to, I'll show you at the end how to change your screen. I'm sure Fletcher can be in charge of reminding me. So should be up to where we're up to. There we are. There we go. So chapter 11, a surprise for Mrs. Fox. The small fox ran back along the tunnel as fast as he could, carrying the 3 plump hens. He was exploding with joy. Just wait, he kept thinking. Just wait till Mummy sees these. He had a long way to run. Sorry, I've just remembered I had to do something else and I've not done it. Sorry, just a second. Stop share. Hold on. I am doing it. Apologies, I was doing it. Okay, he had a long way to run, but he never stopped once on the way and came bursting in upon Mrs. Fox. "Mummy!" he cried out of breath. "Mummy! Look, Mummy, look! Wake up and see what I've brought you." Mrs. Fox, who was weaker than ever now from lack of food, opened one eye and looked at the hens. "I'm dreaming," she murmured, and closed the eye again. "You're not dreaming, Mummy. They're real chickens. We're saved. We're not going to starve." Mrs. Fox opened both eyes and sat up quickly. "But, my dear child," she cried, "where on earth?" "Boggis's chicken house #1, spluttered the small fox. "We tunnelled right up under the floor, and you've never seen so many big, fat hens in all your life. And Dad said to prepare a feast. They'll be back soon." The sight of food seemed to give new strength to Mrs. Fox. "A feast it shall be," she said, standing up. "Oh, what a fantastic fox your father is. Hurry up, child, and start plucking those head chickens." Far away, down in the tunnel, the fantastic Mr. Fox was saying, "Now, for the next bit, my darlings. This one will be as easy as pie. All we have to do is dig another tunnel from here to there." "To where, Dad?" "Don't ask so many questions. Start digging." Chapter 12, Badger. Mr. Fox and the 3 remaining small foxes dug fast and straight. They were all too excited now to feel tired or hungry. They knew they were going to have a whacking great feast before long, and the fact that it was none other than Boggis's chickens they were going to eat made them chuckle with laughter every time they thought of it. It was lovely to realise that while the fat farmer was sitting up there on the hill waiting for them to starve, he was also giving them their dinner without knowing it. "Keep digging," said Mr. Fox. "It's not much further." All of a sudden, A deep voice above their heads said, "Who goes there?" The foxes jumped. They looked up quickly and they saw, peeking through a small hole in the roof of the tunnel, a long, black, pointed, furry face. Ooh. Who could it be? Any ideas? Any ideas, anyone? Oh, let's find out. "Badger!" cried Mr. Fox. "Foxy!" cried Badger. "My goodness me, I'm glad I've found someone at last. I've been digging round in circles for 3 days and nights and I haven't the foggiest idea where I am." Badger made the hole in the ceiling bigger and dropped down beside the foxes. A small badger, his son, dropped down after him. "Haven't you heard what's happening up on the hill?" Badger said excitedly. "It's chaos. Half the woods have disappeared and there are men with guns all over the countryside. None of us can get out, even at night. We're all starving to death." "Who is we?" asked Mr. Fox. And can you see in this picture, can you see Badger poking his head through? And here are all the foxes digging. "All us diggers. That's me and Mole and Rabbit and all our wives and children. Even Weasel, who can usually sneak out of the tightest spots, is right now hiding down my hole with Mrs. Weasel and 6 kids. What on earth are we going to do, Foxy? I think we're finished." Mr. Fox looked at his 3 children and he smiled. The children smiled back at him, sharing his secret. "My dear old Badger," he said, "this mess you're in is all my fault." "I know it's your fault," said Badger furiously, "and the farmers are not going to give up till they've got you. Unfortunately, that means us as well. It means everyone on the hill." Badger sat down and put a paw around his small son. "We're done for," he said softly. "My poor wife up there is so weak she can't dig another yard." "Nor can mine," said Mr. Fox. "And yet, at this very minute, she is preparing for me and my children the most delicious feast of plump, juicy chickens." "Stop!" cried Badger. "Don't tease me. I can't stand it." "It's true!" cried the small foxes. "That's not teasing. We've got chickens galore." "And because everything is entirely my fault," said Mr. Fox, "I invite you to share the feast. I invite everyone to share it. You and Mole and Rabbit and Weasel and all your wives and children. There'll be plenty to go round, I can assure you." "You mean it?" cried Badger. "You really mean it?" Mr. Fox pushed his face closer to Badger's and whispered darkly, "Do you know where we've just been?" "Where?" "Right inside Boggis's chicken house number 1. "No." "Yes. But that is nothing to where we are going now. You have come at just the right moment. My dear Badger, you can help us dig. And in the meanwhile, your small son can run back to Mrs. Badger and all the others and spread the good news." Mr. Fox turned to the small badger and said, "Tell them they are invited to a fox's feast. Then bring them all down here and follow this tunnel back until you find my home." "Yes, Mr. Fox," said Small Badger. "Yes, sir, right away, sir. Oh, thank you, sir." And he scrambled quickly back through the hole in the roof of the tunnel and disappeared. And we can go for one more chapter here. Chapter 13, Bunce's Giant Storehouse. "My dear Foxy," cried Badger, "what in the world has happened to your tail?" "Don't talk about it, please," said Mr. Fox. "It's a painful subject." They were digging the new tunnel. They dug on in silence. Badger was a great digger, and the tunnel went at a terrific pace now that he was lending a paw. Soon they were crouching underneath yet another wooden floor. Mr. Fox grinned slyly, showing sharp white teeth. "If I am not mistaken, my dear Badger," he said, "we are now underneath the farm which belongs to that nasty little pot-bellied dwarf, Bunce. We are, in fact, directly underneath the most interesting part of that farm." "Ducks and geese!" cried the small foxes, licking their lips. Juicy, tender ducks and big, fat geese." "Exactly," said Mr. Fox. "But how in the world can you know where we are?" asked Badger. Mr. Fox grinned again, showing even more white teeth. "Look," he said, "I know my way around these farms blindfold. For me, It's just as easy below ground as it is above it. He reached high and pushed up one wooden floorboard, then another. He poked his head through the gap. Yes, he shouted, jumping up into the room above. I've done it again. I've hit it smack on the nose, right in the bullseye. Come and look. Quickly, Badger and the 3 small foxes scrambled up after him. They stopped and stared. They stood and gaped. They were so overwhelmed they couldn't speak, for what they now saw was a kind of fox's dream, a badger's dream, a paradise for hungry animals. This, my dear old Badger, proclaimed Mr. Fox, is Bunce's mighty storehouse. All his finest stuff is stored in here before he sends it off to market. Against all the 4 walls of the great room, stacked in cupboards and piled upon shelves reaching from floor to ceiling, were thousands and thousands of the finest and fattest ducks and geese, plucked and ready for roasting. And up above, dangling from the rafters, there must have been at least 100 smoked hams and 50 sides of bacon. Just feast your eyes on that, cried Mr. Fox, dancing up and down. What do you think of it, eh? Pretty good, but grub. And you see, here they are, tulling it up, and you can see Mr. Fox fishing on the wooden roof. Well, floor, I suppose. Here they are when they get inside. Oh, look at all those ducks and geese. Suddenly, as though springs had been released in their legs, the 3 hungry small foxes and the ravenously hungry badger sprang forward to grab the luscious food. Stop, ordered Mr. Fox. This is my party, so I shall do the choosing. The others fell back, licking their chops. Mr. Fox began prowling around the storehouse, examining the glorious display with an expert eye. A thread of saliva slid down one side of his jaw and hung suspended in midair, then snapped. We mustn't overdo it, he said. Mustn't give the game away. Mustn't let them know what we've been up to. We must be neat and tidy and take a few of the choicest morsels. So, to start with, we shall have 4 plump young ducks. He took them from the shelf. Oh, how lovely and fat they are. No wonder Bunce gets a special price for them in the market. All right, Badger, lend me a hand to get them down. You children can help as well. There we go. Goodness me, look how your mouths are watering. And now, I think we had better have a few geese. 3 will be quite enough. We'll take the biggest. Oh my, you'll never see finer geese than these in a king's kitchen. Gently does it, that's the way. And what about a couple of nice smoked hams? I adore smoked ham, don't you, Badger? Fetch me that step-ladder, will you please? Mr. Fox climbed up the ladder and handed down 3 magnificent hams. And do you like bacon, Badger? I'm mad about bacon, cried Badger, dancing with excitement. Let's have a side of bacon, that big one up there. And carrots, Dad, said the smallest of the 3 foxes. We must take some of those lovely carrots. Don't be a twerp, said Mr. Fox. You know we never eat things like that. It's not for us, Dad, it's for the rabbits. They only eat vegetables. Oh, my goodness me, you're right, cried Mr. Fox. What a thoughtful little fellow you are. Take 10 bunches of carrots. Soon all this lovely loot was lying in a neat heap upon the floor. The small foxes crouched close, their noses twitching, their eyes shining like stars. And now, said Mr. Fox, we shall have to borrow from our friend Bunce 2 of those useful pushcarts over in the corner. He and Badger fetched the pushcarts, and the ducks and the geese and hams and bacon were loaded onto them. Quickly, the pushcarts were lowered through the hole in the floor. The animals slid down after them. Back in the tunnel, Mr. Fox pulled the floorboards very carefully into place so that no one could see they had been moved. My darlings, he said, pointing to 2 of the small foxes, take a cart each and run back as fast as you can to your mother. Give her my love and tell her we're having guests for dinner, the badgers, the moles, the rabbits and the weasels. Tell her it must be a truly great feast, and tell her the rest of us will be at home as soon as we've done one more little job. Yes, Dad, right away, Dad, they answered. And they grabbed a trolley each and went rushing off down through the tunnel. And you see them there rushing off with all that lovely food. Oh, wow, Mrs. Fox is going to be so pleased with that, isn't she? Let me unmute. Hello? Can you hear me now? Oh, we can all be able to hear
Yeah.
it. Great stuff. What did you think?
It was good.
Yeah. Do you think Mrs. Fox will be pleased with her feast?
Yeah.
How clever of the rabbits, of the little school. Do you remember about the rabbits? What do they remember about the rabbits?
They eat carrots.
They eat vegetables. They don't eat meat, do they? Where do you think they might be going next? Anyone have any ideas where they might be going next? They've been to the Boggis, and they've been to Bunce to get the ducks and the geese. So where could they be going next?
Are your friends on the harbour?
Where haven't they been?
No, none of them your friends. Here they are. What?
Who's the other farmer? Boggis
Forgot.
Bean. I think they might be going to Bean next, to Bean Farm.
Oh, I remember in the movie when I think they're gonna trick them and like at the end of the movie they like
Don't give the game away in case someone hasn't seen the film. But I think it'll be me again tomorrow, but I think at some point this week you might be having Mrs. Ward to read a story.